I left the love of my life because I believed I could do better. I am now 42 years old, childless, and alone. I wanted to open up and share a tale from my life that has been on my mind recently. Imagine this. Back in 1989, I was at my engagement party, having a great time with my fiancé, Jake. We were surrounded by our closest friends and family, laughing and dancing as if there was no tomorrow. In that moment, I felt like I was about to burst with joy. As I stared into Jake's eyes, I knew he was the man I was supposed to spend my life with. He was my soulmate, without a doubt. Our love was deep and genuine, and we had our entire future planned together. We had basic dreams back then. First, we planned to save money to buy our own comfortable small home. Then we'd have a lovely wedding ceremony to remember forever. Of course, we couldn't wait to hear the pitter-patter of small feet as toddlers followed. But this is when my story takes a turn. You see, I was just 19 years old at the time, and I had a lot of unrealistic expectations for life. I hoped I could do better, that there was something more interesting out there for me. I couldn't help but feel I was the girl who had everything, and I foolishly convinced myself that I needed to do something different right now. Fast forward 20 years, and I find myself in an entirely different situation. I'm single, childless, and dealing with the sad fact that I gave up the only legitimate shot at happiness I've ever had, my precious Jake. I walked away from him, feeling that a more exciting and meaningful existence awaited me someplace out there, but guess what? There wasn't. Sometimes we make decisions in the heat of the moment, believing they will lead to something greater, only to discover later that what we had was already the best. Today, I'm 42 years old. You see, I've accomplished a lot in terms of worldly achievement. I have a successful career, financial security, and a nice home in London's famous Notting Hill neighborhood. It sounds fantastic, doesn't it? But there is one thing that has always been missing in my life, and it is the thing I most desire. I have a loving husband and a family of my own. Jake, a man in my life at the time, offered me everything I desired. He understood me like no one else and loved me in a way that was truly unique. He wasn't simply my lover, he was also my best friend. Nowadays, seeing happy couples with their children stings. I understand that having my own family may never be a reality. I often recall Jake and I talking about having children and even considering which names we would give them. Looking back, I can't believe how much happiness I let go of. Instead, here I am, back in the singles market, looking for the same thing I passed over without a second thought all those years ago. I recognize that I cannot go back in time and have Jake back in my life. It's difficult to hear bits and pieces about his happy life, knowing that 15 years after I stopped our relationship, he's happily married today. It's a difficult pill to swallow as we all go through life. Many of us may ponder whether the grass is greener on the other side. We may confuse contentment for boredom, failing to appreciate the beautiful things we already have. My advice to people considering leaving something good is to take a moment to reflect on how different life could be. I wish I had listened to Jake when he begged me not to leave him. Tears streamed down both of our faces that day. I couldn't stand to see the man I loved in such anguish, and it tore me apart to see his heart break right in front of my eyes. But despite the suffering, I held firm on my resolve. Little did I know that the words I uttered at that time would prove to be hauntingly prescient. Jake vowed, "I will always be here for you." And in my teenage arrogance, I held out hope that I could put our relationship on hold and return to him later. Jake and I first met at the same comprehensive school in Essex. We were only teenagers back then with our entire lives ahead of us. Our love tale began shortly before Christmas in 1987, when I was 17 years old and deep into my A-level studies. Jake had previously graduated and worked as a motorcycle courier. We clicked right away and our families encouraged our budding relationship. We quickly fell in love with one another. Jake had an uncanny ability to combine passion and practicality, which irritated me at times. His Christmas gifts to me included a leather jacket and a pair of thermal tights. They may not have been the most glamorous, but they were certainly considerate. Jake made an unexpected move just 2 weeks later, after we'd been dating for less than a month. It happened as we were driving in my small mini club, man. He suddenly yelled at me to stop the automobile. His voice carried a sense of urgency. I slammed the brakes in the center of traffic, unconcerned about the furious automobiles blowing their horns. We both leaped out of the car in the thick of the pandemonium on the road. Jake dropped to one knee. "I love you, Karen," he declared. "Promise to marry me someday." I couldn't help but chuckle and scream, "Yes." His proposal had taken me by surprise, and I was relieved to learn that he felt the same way I did. Jake proposed with a magnificent diamond solitaire ring during a romantic supper in the summer of 1989. Only 2 months later, we celebrated our engagement with 40 of our closest friends and family at the quaint small house we were renting at the time. The next year, we made a huge stride ahead by buying a little starter property in Grays, Essex. We moved in with a variety of furnishings that we had begged, borrowed, and purchased through various methods. The thought of this newfound adulthood made us chuckle with glee. I was starting my career at a funeral home and a women's magazine while Jake was fitting ties and exhausts. Our combined salaries barely amounted to £15,000 each year, making it difficult to fulfill our home payments. We convinced ourselves that it wouldn't be long until our salary increased and we could afford weekly indulgences and a larger home to raise the children we had always wanted. Then followed the unforeseen housing market meltdown, which forced us into a difficult position of negative equity. Initially, our problems pushed us closer together as we faced them together. However, as time passed and my magazine work grew with a larger pay, I became increasingly resentful of Jake. He appeared to be moving from one dead-end employment to another. I still loved him, but I became embarrassed by his blue-collar jobs and upset that, despite his ability, he had a solid profession. Things became worse when he bought a bright blue and pink VW Beetle. I couldn't help but ask why he couldn't drive a more regular vehicle. Seemingly minor concerns began to annoy me. I began wishing for him to be more sophisticated and earn a greater salary. I found myself envious of those who had spouses with more financial security to assist them when they began their families. Regrettably, I stopped seeing Jake as an equal. I had lost sight of all the things that had initially sparked my love for Jake. His acute intelligence, our common sense of humor, and unwavering resolve to stand out in a crowd were exactly what drew me to him. Instead, I started seeing him as someone who was holding me back in life. I began encouraging him to seek a more solid career, and I was thrilled and heartened when he decided to join the police force in 1995. While it should have marked a fresh and promising chapter in our lives, it instead exacerbated the breakdown of our relationship. We went from spending almost every evening and weekend together to hardly seeing each other at all. Jake's grueling round-the-clock shifts as a police officer kept him busy while I worked long hours on the launch of a new magazine. Our previously robust sex life decreased, and our outings together became increasingly infrequent. I stopped enjoying the small gestures he used to make, such as leaving charming, romantic notes on my pillow or exploring old bookstores for literature he knew I'd enjoy. It's terrible to admit that, despite being my best friend, I had taken him completely for granted. After weeks of dwelling on his perceived flaws, I took the heartbreaking choice to inform Jake that I was leaving. It was a heartbreaking conversation that lasted several hours, punctuated by tears and his pleadings for me to reconsider, but I maintained my resolution. Even my parents, who had always thought Jake was the perfect man for me, were horrified by my decision. My father's comments from that tragic day echoed in my head. "Karen, think long and hard about what you are doing. There's a lot to be said about someone who truly loves you," he insisted. He recognized that I was making a huge mistake and attempted to explain it in the gentlest way possible, but I refused to take his advice. Convinced that a better Mr. Right was just around the corner, I relocated to Hornchurch, Essex, where I rented a flat. I enthusiastically embraced the single life. By this point, I had advanced to the position of editor at a national magazine, and my life revolved around a flurry of premieres, dinner parties, and cocktail gatherings as I devoted all of my energy to my work. Jake and I remained connected even after we both went on to new relationships, but deep down, I couldn't help but feel jealous every time I learned about the ladies he was dating. Looking back, I can accept that my actions were motivated by a selfish wish to keep him to myself. Nonetheless, our bond remained at the center of our existence. Jake introduced me to his first serious girlfriend in 2000, just after he turned 34 years old, after our breakup, Sarah. Everything looked normal until one fateful night when I phoned him for advice. Jake's response was startlingly cold, and he requested me not to approach him again. He also asked me not to send birthday or Christmas cards, disclosing that Sarah had been offended by the last one I sent. He told me he needed to prioritize his own feelings over mine. It hit me like a ton of bricks. Jake was now prioritizing another lady over me. This abrupt change confused and upset me. I couldn't understand how Sarah had managed to get between us. I'm ashamed to admit that in the following weeks, I let my emotions get the best of me. I aired my irritation and jealousy in a series of heated phone calls during which both Jake and Sarah displayed illogical behavior. I didn't want Jake back, but I couldn't face the idea of being overshadowed by Sarah. Predictably, after one especially heated fight, Jake hung up the phone and refused to take any more of my calls. I had no idea at the time that it would be the final time I spoke to him. I met Richard not long after our disagreement. Our romance went off like a whirlwind, and within a year we were engaged and had purchased a lovely farmhouse in the Norfolk countryside. Despite continuing my profession as a journalist and commuting to London, I felt like I had finally found the excitement and love I had been searching for. However, Jake never left my mind, and I couldn't stop bringing him up in conversations, even drawing analogies between him and Richard. They were two completely different individuals. Richard appeared to be openly romantic. He constantly proved unfaithful, making me feel too insecure to conceive a family with him. After 3.5 years together, he stormed out, admitting that his most recent lover was pregnant with his child. Thankfully, he found someone else. Chad hid once more. I had left the trustworthy, caring, and kind guy in search of an exciting life. However, that decision did not result in a happy conclusion. My life began to crumble the following year, and I was confronted with the difficult challenge of rebuilding it. During this period of meditation, I finally understood the wisdom of my father's comments. It occurred to me that Jake was the only one who actually loved and understood me. When I learned from a mutual friend that he had split up with Sarah, I summoned the guts to write him a sincere letter apologizing for my previous behavior and appealing for forgiveness and a second chance. It had been 6 long years since we had last spoken, and I had the naive expectation that he would be willing to hear from me. However, I was unaware that Sarah was still staying in the house and had intercepted my personal letter. She found my phone number and left several angry and hateful voicemails. Once again, my unintentional acts had caused havoc in Jake's life, so it was no surprise that I never heard a response from him. Despite writing to him several times over the next several months, I ultimately decided to my contact to birthday and Christmas cards, assuming that if he changed his mind he would find a way to contact me. A few years ago, I received surprising news. Jake married his new partner, Nicola. For a few moments it felt like the breath was knocked out of my lungs and tears flowed down my cheeks. Jake and Nicola are still living in Essex, and as far as I know they have not started a family yet. The next milestone, which I am absolutely dreading, has arrived. It's been 11 years since Jake and I last spoke, and I've accepted that the door to reconciliation is firmly closed. Perhaps he has found what he was looking for, and I am now only a distant memory in his life. Of course, it is the brutal fact. He has most likely not thought about me in years, or if he has, it is most likely to reflect on the lessons he learned from the way I treated him following my separation with Richard. I had another serious connection with Rob, which lasted 4 years. Surprisingly, Rob reminded me a lot of Jake. He was a decent and honorable man who was the life of the party while yet being polite and sensitive. However, we both had wounds from earlier heartbreaks which hindered us from making it work. While I wished for children, he had already raised an adult son and had no desire to begin again. So, once again, I find myself alone, tortured by regrets about not staying with Jake. I frequently believed that by now I would be happily married with children, and this is where my actual belief lies. Marriage, in my opinion, is lovely and magical, but it shines brightest when you're young, naive, and still believe in it wholeheartedly. However, as you get older, the dating landscape becomes more gloomy and disheartening. People become cynical and resentful, making it extremely difficult to find the romantic Disney movie love we previously fantasized about, as it frequently appears to not exist in the domain of middle-aged dating. Reflecting about my past, perhaps Jake was not the proper man for me. I will never have a solid answer to that question. However, it is apparent that my decision to leave him cost me the opportunity to become a mother. It's a reality I must face, and I admit that my attention has been primarily on how this has affected me, without fully recognizing the ruin and pain I caused him. You're totally correct. I can't help but think about the likelihood that I had a lasting impression on Jake, one that may have cost him years of emotional misery. Whenever I visit our hometown and run into friends and family, I secretly hope to run across Jake. In my heart, I want to apologize and tell him that I am truly sorry and that I will always be there for him. However, deep down, I would not be surprised if he chose to ignore me and go away. I'd want to offer some suggestions to individuals who are thinking about leaving a seemingly routine or ordinary relationship. Don't make the same mistake I did and confuse satisfaction with sadness. Sometimes satisfaction is a choice, and walking away can result in a lifetime of regret. Well, it was a long story, but it serves as a good reminder of the significance of making great judgments in relationships. It demonstrates how some people, regardless of gender, might make rash decisions and underestimate the importance of a stable and loving companion as they age. It's easy to believe that you're still the same person you were when you were younger, but the truth rarely matches that perspective. Here is the next story. Last year, my ex-wife had an affair and chose to leave me. Strangely, I felt relieved when it happened. Our marriage appeared to be going well from the outside, but it was entirely empty on the inside. For years, I felt broken because of the mental and financial hardship she placed on me. She had a propensity of withdrawing enormous amounts of money from my account, leaving me unable to pay our payments whenever I confronted her with it. She turned it back on me, accusing me of not earning enough money no matter what I did. It was never satisfactory for her. Everything I did seemed to irritate or make her upset. I would try to set up dates for us or organize family activities in the hopes of spending quality time together. But she wasn't interested. She would grumble or become irritated, preferring to stay in bed and sleep. I eventually stopped trying to include her in anything, which always resulted in more complaints from her. She accused me of keeping the children away from her, despite the fact that she had expressed no interest in participating in the first place. After some time, she started spending evenings away from home. Initially, she would pretend she was staying at a friend's place, who I barely knew. But when I asked inquiries, she became furious and said it wasn't my business where she was. When my ex-wife decided she wanted a divorce, I experienced a range of emotions. On one side, I was concerned about what my life would be like following the divorce. However, I couldn't help but feel relieved that our terrible marriage was coming to an end. I made a point of thoroughly reading all of the documentation her lawyer sent over. It came out that her lawyer was not very cautious, making numerous mistakes on the papers. These inaccuracies resulted in a several-month delay in our divorce court. Every time I saw an error, I returned the documents without signing them. Then his office would have to revise and resend the documents. However, they frequently made fresh or repeated blunders. The document also contained some significant errors. They misspelled my name. Her name incorrectly spelled both of our birth dates as well as our child's name and birth date. They listed children who were not ours, misplaced our marriage date, and even gave us the erroneous house location. They included properties, pets, and businesses that we did not own, even recommending a settlement of $500,000 for firms that we did not own. One of the drafts even had her lawyer's name spelled improperly, which I found amusing. I chuckled about it while in the restroom. It took them roughly 7 drafts to fix the majority of these errors. However, the final draft that was submitted to the court still contained significant inaccuracies, and the entire procedure was annoying but also entertaining due to the sheer number of errors and how simple they were. It made a horrible situation a bit more palatable, knowing that at least these hiccups were slowing things down and giving me time to plan for what came next. During our divorce processes, my ex-wife's lawyer attempted to argue in front of the judge that I should pay all court and legal bills. However, I was able to present a compelling argument against this. I pointed out that many of the process delays were caused by their mistakes rather than mine. The paperwork they supplied me contained so many inaccuracies that it took longer to straighten everything out. As a result, the judge waived my expenses. Following our divorce, my ex-wife moved in with the man she left me for. It turns out he isn't a good guy and has been abusive. After I changed all of my banking passwords, she suddenly lost access to my money. She immediately discovered how much she relied on my salary to fund her lifestyle, which surprised her. To make matters worse, she had been managing the finances for the house we were living in, which actually belonged to her uncle because she had not made the installments. The bank almost took the house away. Her uncle came to me anxious for assistance. He told me that if I wanted to stay in the house, I would have to make the back payments. She skipped, which amounted to almost $15,000 for 6 months of delinquent mortgage. I didn't have that much money sitting around, so I suggested buying the house from him instead. To my amazement, he accepted. And now I own the house that formerly belonged to my ex-wife's grandma. It has been 1 year after the divorce was finalized. I obtained a promotion at work, which included a significant wage raise. I'm still living in the same house, working on upgrades whenever I can afford them. I haven't found a new girlfriend, but internet dating has let me meet new people and enjoy my single life. Looking back, it's almost comical how my ex-wife abandoned a solid situation for someone who turned out to be far from what she imagined, and how her actions almost cost her uncle his land. Her decision to divorce me was, in some ways, a big blessing to me, even if it didn't appear that way at the time. She may try to return to you once she sees the grass isn't greener on the other side, but don't let her tears sway you and never take her back. Now, for my update. November 3rd marks 1 year since my divorce was finalized. In the last year, I've taken considerable steps to improve myself. I started seeing a therapist who pushed me to focus on my own development, and that is exactly what I have been doing. I adjusted my diet and workout habits, and I lost more than 50 pounds. Soccer has always been a passion of mine, so I resumed playing frequently and even began coaching my children's youth soccer team. On top of that, I rekindled my passion of reading, setting a goal of reading a new book every week. My efforts have also paid off at work. I obtained a significant raise and promotion, which has made it much easier for me to care for myself and my child. Despite all of these wonderful developments, my ex-wife has shown a desire to reintegrate into our lives. Her most recent romance with a man she hoped would save her from our horrible marriage has turned violent. He has been abusive, and one recent episode was so bad that she had to be hospitalized. Our toddler was with her at the time, and we had to call an ambulance. Despite the evidence, my ex-wife refuses to seek charges or accept what happened, despite the fact that the bruises speak for themselves. Last night, I went to a family celebration. This side of the family and I have always gotten along, and they invited me over. I was nice to my ex-wife, but chose not to participate in discussion with her. However, her family appears to have convinced her that we are still in love, which could not be further from the truth. My ex-wife may have been okay with the state of our marriage, but I was not. I became withdrawn and apathetic, almost as if I was just another source of income for her. We spent the last 2 years together. She took advantage of me emotionally and financially throughout our final year of marriage. When I went to confront her about her affair, she was cheating on me with another man. She denied everything and ran off to his house. I finally caught her red-handed. She blamed me, saying that I wasn't supportive enough. But the truth was that I was giving her all of my wages after we paid our bills. I hadn't bought myself new clothes or shoes in years due to a lack of funds. Then, out of nowhere, she showed up at one of the soccer games after the game and asked if I was ready to move back in with her. I was completely taken away and questioned her why I would do such a thing. She began into a long story about how we're still in love. We have a child together and it would be better for them if we reared them together. I had to tell her the truth. I no longer love or trust her. I even told her that she still owed me more than $1,100 for servicing her car. How did she respond? She offered to pay me back if we moved in together. That's when I lost control and busted out laughing so hard that I doubled over. She started crying, which only made me laugh harder. Maybe it wasn't the nicest reply, but after everything I'd gone through and all the effort I'd put into bettering myself, the thought of returning to her, to the exact person who had caused me so much anguish, felt like the worst conceivable decision. My child still cares deeply for his mother and I would never do anything to jeopardize their relationship. I believe that if there is any turning away to be done, she will handle it on her own by her behaviors. She offered that we move back in together, which surprised me. She did not apologize or express sorrow for her previous conduct. Instead, she made a bold proposal. We begin living together again, as if she brings something significant to the table. Her way of thinking is somewhat unconventional. And then there's our child, who had to endure the upsetting experience of witnessing his mother in a dangerous scenario. That has the potential to profoundly affect him. I believe it is critical to attempt to acquire full custody in order to keep him from being exposed to such a dangerous atmosphere again. Moving on to my most recent news, I met someone really amazing. I recognize that healing from all of these events will take time for everyone involved, but I'm optimistic that we can all find our own forms of happiness. Whatever decision we make regarding our connections, the last year has been a roller coaster for me. On November 3rd, I marked the first anniversary of my divorce. Since then, I've been working on self-improvement through therapy and I have been dating. I've met some amazing women, as well as a few that were not a good fit for me. My ex-wife only found out about my girlfriend's Facebook post on Monday. Cher had shared some images from our amazing weekend trip together. We ate amazing food, drank a few drinks, and had a great time photographing all of the fun moments. I'm not normally one to take pictures on my dates, but I really enjoyed sharing. So when she asked if she could share images from our trip and tag me, I happily agreed. I was pretty confident posting those images would cause some controversy. However, the reaction I received from my ex-wife and her family was quite intense. Allow me to provide some additional context to help you see the big picture. My ex-wife was unfaithful for more than a year before we officially broke our marriage. She was seeing someone else before we separated and she moved in with her boyfriend while our divorce was being filed. We've been divorced for 1 year. Throughout our marriage, my ex-wife was emotionally and financially manipulative and abusive to me. Unfortunately, she remains abusive. However, once I posted those images, she became quite hostile and disrespectful to me. On Monday, she altered the story so that it appeared that I was the one who had been unfaithful. She talked about how horrible it was for me to disgrace her by posting images on social media of myself with other women. She accused me of being selfish and insensitive for not considering her feelings, and she called me a coward for concealing that I am seeing other people. She even claimed that my activities had destroyed any chance of us ever getting back together, claiming that any love she still had for me had been snuffed out by what she called my unfaithful habits. She was shouting and berating me over the phone the entire time she was making these claims. Meanwhile, I couldn't help but laugh at the irony in her remarks. I just smiled as she went on for 30 minutes about how I purportedly ruined our relationship and betrayed her, despite the fact that she was the one who cheated and was abusive throughout our relationship. When my ex-wife inquired about my fidelity during our marriage, I was forthcoming with her. I had been entirely faithful and loyal until our relationship officially ended. She did not stop there, however. She went on to ask about my dating life following our divorce. This made me chuckle even harder, and I firmly told her that my personal life is no longer her concern because we are no longer together. I told her that just as I don't meddle in her business, she has no right to interfere with mine. Despite my attempts to establish this border, she bombarded me with a series of really harsh and insulting text messages directed at myself and my current girlfriend. She even threatened to send her shared direct messages full of harsh comments about being married to me. I told her she could try if she thought it would make a difference. Then my ex-wife stated wanting to see Cher in person to see what type of lady she is, implying that Cher must be a bad person for allegedly ending a nice marriage. That's when I had to seriously question her grasp of reality. I reminded her simply that our marriage had ended more than a year ago and she had had an affair. She left me for someone else and filed for divorce. At this time, my ex-wife came down in tears, admitting that she had been holding out hope that we could reunite. She complained that it was unfair. I had moved on and found someone else to spend time with, demanding that I should continue to do things with her and our child as if we were still family. This entire exchange demonstrated how distant from reality my ex-wife had become, appearing unwilling to acknowledge the consequences of her own actions that led to the dissolution of our marriage. My ex-wife just told me that she is dissatisfied in her present relationship with her partner, stating that he does not treat her well. Honestly, I wasn't astonished by this revelation because I had suspected it for a long time. However, hearing about her hardships does not give me any satisfaction. In reality, I no longer have feelings for her and have no desire to get back together with her. I'd prefer that we don't have to interact at all. On a positive side, my life is going quite well right now. I've discovered happiness with my partner, Cher. She brings so much joy into my life and I always enjoy spending time with her. She's the last person I speak with before going to sleep and the first person I call out to when I wake up. We are even arranging another trip together soon. I'm conscious that sharing images of our trip may elicit a bad reaction from my ex-wife, but to me, living a happy life is worth any criticism. My ex-wife has always tried to portray me as the evil guy, which is typical narcissistic behavior. Those who are offering me advice are correct. I should keep our interactions focused on our child and avoid getting drawn into lengthy, meaningless chats with her. And sure, I am prepared for the chance that she will try to spread lies about me, but I'm focused on going forward in a constructive manner. Now for some reflection. March 21, 2022 was 2 years since the day everything changed for me, that late night of 2021. I discovered evidence of another affair and possibly more. After 23 years of marriage, 2 biological children and 1 stepchild, I spent a year attempting to repair our relationship. However, her persistent struggles with mental health, PTSD, substance misuse, and secretive behavior, such as discovering a second phone she was using, made it impossible to continue trying to reconcile. The final straw in my marriage was when she discharged a gun into my side of the bed. That scary moment convinced me to terminate things once and for all. I filed for divorce in April, and by June it was all over. The relief I felt was immense. It seemed like I had been granted a second opportunity in life. Until that time, I had no idea how much tension and dread I had been dealing with. Looking back, I can see all of the mistakes I made. After realizing her duplicity, I responded incorrectly. Instead of taking the time to analyze everything, I hurried into attempting to repair our relationship without addressing the root causes. We didn't seek therapy right away, which was a significant oversight. By the time we started therapy, it was too late to make a difference. Our children had already lost all respect for their mother, and I was left feeling devastated, humiliated, angry, and sad. I was barely getting through the day, feeling like a zombie. In April of last year, I was overwhelmed by the number of people who contacted me to express their support after my ex-wife launched a smear campaign against me on social media. She accused me of everything from abuse and rape to stealing a large sum of money. Of course, she cleverly omitted her own activities. I responded by making a brief public service statement to clear my name, claiming that none of the allegations were true. I understood why some people wanted to separate themselves from me, but I also hoped that others would give me the opportunity to prove my innocence. Meanwhile, I worked on developing myself. I got in shape and dropped from 250 pounds to 185. I also made a huge career change, accepting a new position that came with a promotion. I had planned to have a summer of revenge by casually dating using phone applications. During this time, an old high school classmate contacted me. She lived far away and was experiencing a similar breakup. She learned her partner's treachery around 6 months after I did. We started checking in with each other on a regular basis, offering support and understanding. When I had to travel to Knoxville for work, we spent one night texting to catch up and share our experiences. I had been looking forward to seeing some live music throughout my vacation, talking about how great the 2 nights ahead of me would be. But contrary to my initial expectations, my summer did not consist of a succession of casual flings, as I had envisioned. Instead, what happened was a summer full of beach trips and live music tours of distilleries. Because she enjoys whiskey and simply having a good time, which I hadn't experienced in years. As summer turned into October, our bond grew stronger. We met each other's families, spent Thanksgiving with her family, enjoyed Christmas together, and even traveled to Las Vegas for a long weekend to watch the Super Bowl. All of these experiences brought us closer. Now, as I celebrate my 52nd birthday, I am really joyful. The last few birthdays have been difficult, but this one seems extra special and wonderful because she is about to move in with me. She is a nurse who found work swiftly in my city in the South. She has opted to keep her own house and let her daughter rent it out. If a buddy were in my condition, I would have warned them that it was too much, too quickly. But for us, it simply feels like the correct choice. We are not rushing toward marriage or anything like that. We're just two people who are weary of juggling our schedules and missing out on time together. We're moving in together to see if our connection is as solid as we say it is on this forum. Many people discuss karma or taking revenge on their ex-partners. In my case, my ex still texts me drunk, frequently expressing she wishes we were still together. It's a mix of apologizing and blaming me for the split. She's sorry half the time, but the other half of the time she blames me for everything. But the truth is that I'm more happier without her. I am less stressed, and I met someone great. She is great, much more than I ever imagined to be with, and she is extremely into me, even if I sometimes wonder if it's too good to be true. So in a way, I feel like I've already gained the finest type of payback by simply living my life. Well, my message to you all is that even if what occurred to you because of your spouse or partner was tragic, you can overcome it and find happiness again. They don't often recognize how fortunate they are until it is too late, but once you're on the other side, you may realize that you're actually better off. I shared my story to encourage you not to give up, no matter how difficult things become. It's never too late for a fresh start. Remember to prioritize yourself and believe in your potential to recover and prosper. Things can truly improve. I was able to start again at 50, demonstrating that it is possible at any age. Let's get to the next story. Last night, my wife opted to spend time with her friends as she does frequently. Usually when she goes out like this, she returns home around 1:30 a.m. So I remained up a little later till 2 a.m. expect her to stroll through the door at any time. When she didn't, I decided to phone her and check how she was. She picked up the phone, and I could hear other people speaking in the background. She added that they were at a party and were going to leave in a few minutes. However, the clock read 2:30 a.m., and she was still not home, so I texted her. She did not respond, but the message showed that it was delivered. Concerned, I called her again about 3:30 a.m., but she didn't answer after a few rings, and my call went to voicemail. At 6:39 a.m., she arrived home. I recall the exact time because I was so concerned about her. She was dressed in a frock and mesh leggings, which were novel to me. The leggings were shredded, and her makeup appeared to be messed up. Seeing her in that state made me really nervous at first. I feared something horrible had happened to her. When I asked if she had been wounded, she simply shook her head. I then asked her what had happened, and her response confirmed my worst thoughts. She hinted that she had cheated. She acknowledged to meeting someone at the club, returning to his residence, and spending the night there before getting an Uber home. She appeared unconcerned about the situation and declined to dispute. She simply wanted to sleep, and this is exactly what she did. She went to bed without even taking a shower, and she is still sleeping after what transpired. I am persuaded that our marriage cannot continue. We don't have children and rent our property, so breaking up shouldn't be too difficult. Part of me wants to figure out how to put things right. However, I've always believed that cheating is unacceptable. It appears that I must stand by my ideals and discontinue our relationship. End of the OP's post. I completely agree with you. Sticking to your values is the best option here. It appears that there is nothing left in this relationship to try to fix. She appears to have anticipated the consequences of her conduct, and she may even be planning a divorce. It's difficult to understand why somebody would do this. It appears to be an extremely dumb decision, but the fact that she made it clear, particularly by not returning home and ignoring your calls, speaks volumes. The manner she arrived, not bothering to sweep up her coins, demonstrates a flagrant disdain for the circumstances. Normally, someone who is trying to hide their cheating may try to cover their tracks or express anxiety about being detected. She didn't appear to care about it, though. This is not what you would expect from someone who cherishes their relationship. My suggestion is to move forward with the divorce without hesitation. Don't waste yourself attempting to save something she has plainly demonstrated she no longer values. Unfortunately, she has chosen a very harmful choice. I'm keen to know what other people think about this circumstance. If you were in his shoes, what would you do next? Would you consider trying to fix things or taking some time apart to reflect? Or do you believe that divorce is the only option left? Share your opinions down below in the comments. Let's take a moment to hear what our community members are saying about this difficult situation. First off, John897 weighed in, saying if being faithful is a basic expectation for you in a relationship and it's entirely acceptable to have that expectation, then it's evident that this expectation has been shattered. When your wife tries to justify her actions, perhaps by blaming it on being drunk or professing her love for you, remember that these are only words. The true issue is that she has badly upset you by violating your trust and the commitment you both made to each other. John897 highlights that you should hold firm in your decision to leave someone who hasn't provided you the respect and loyalty you deserve, and he appreciates your response, noting how simply hearing confirmation from others can be extremely validating and beneficial. He also emphasizes understanding your unwillingness to even listen to her explanation, considering the trust has been irreversibly damaged. Moving Ginsell 34 emphasizes a vital issue you might be trying to explain: sticking, because the shock of the betrayal is still new. The pain and sense of betrayal won't just disappear. Once the initial shock wears off, he suggests, not entertaining her attempts to explain or minimize her actions. Additionally, he advises getting an STD screening for safety, pointing out that this might not be her first lapse in judgment. Dope offers a perspective doubting the infidelity was a repeated offense, given his wife's tendency to be open and not keep secrets. However, he acknowledges the wisdom in getting tested, despite a personal discomfort with needles as a precaution. Lastly, Snake 4576 brings a reflective angle, challenging you to think of any justification for cheating when you realize there are none. It underscores that fidelity was a conscious choice you made because of your love and commitment. The point made is poignant. You deserve a partner who reciprocates your love and commitment. If your wife cannot offer that, her excuses are irrelevant, and your love is better invested in someone who will cherish and return it. This collection of comments from the community offers a blend of validation, practical advice, and deeper reflections on love and commitment, all aimed at supporting you through this challenging time. Another information from Opie's comments. Both of our names are on the lease, which means I can't just kick her out, even though I might want to. We're stuck in this situation because our lease doesn't end for another 5 months. If I decide to leave early, I'll have to pay a fee. But financially, I can handle it. So it's not the biggest problem I have right now. I've also thought about throwing her belongings out on the street, but I know that won't make me feel any better. It's not like I'd get anything positive from causing a commotion outside. I did end up breaking a picture frame after she went to sleep, though it was a moment of frustration, and I'm not usually someone who does things like that, but I needed to let out some anger somehow. I'm even considering finding another place to stay just for tonight. But part of me feels like it's unfair that I should have to be the one to leave. I'm really shocked and hurt right now. I need to figure out how to deal with these feelings of love when she's just destroyed our marriage. It's hard to stop thinking about how nonchalant she was about the whole thing, as if she wanted me to find out. She showed up in clothes I'd never seen before, and her casual attitude felt like a betrayal. Remembering that moment is painful. The first thing she did was text her friend to say she had fun, and then to let them know she got home safe. I looked through her phone and took screenshots of these messages, sending them to myself. I even tried to talk to her friend to get more of the story, though I'm not sure if that will help, considering they're close friends. It's a tough situation, and I'm trying to work through my emotions and figure out the best way to handle this. While the community agrees the relationship has ended, the deal has been broken, and it seems that Opie arrived at the same conclusion as I did, but for different reasons. So now it's time to move on with the first of 2 updates that Opie has given us to the story. Now, let's move on with that first update. Hello again, everyone. I'm really sorry for not being able to share this update with you all sooner. Yesterday I couldn't get a day off because my boss isn't very understanding, so I had to go to work, even though I was feeling really upset and not myself. But luckily things got so bad at work because of how upset I was that they let me take the rest of the week off as vacation time. That's a small silver lining because it gave me some time to deal with all my emotions. It's like I went through a whole roller coaster of feelings all while my soon-to-be ex was asleep when I first posted my story here. I didn't think anyone would actually read it or care. I just felt so alone and needed to talk to someone, anyone, because my head was a mess. By the time it was noon, she was still sleeping, and I had started to get my thoughts together a bit more. I made a list of things I needed to know from her and gathered up all my important stuff, like my laptop and all my important papers. Then I decided to start packing a bag for myself. I know a lot of you said I should kick her out, but honestly, I don't really care much about this apartment. We're just renting it, and I'm lucky enough to be in a position where I can afford to pay my share of the rent for a few more months without it ruining me financially. It's going to hurt my wallet a bit, sure, but I'll survive. Plus, being in this apartment just keeps reminding me of her, and I need to start moving on with my life. She woke up while I was in the middle of packing my bag. At first she looked around, kind of confused, and then she just started crying really hard. I might sound mean, but I didn't try to comfort her. I just told her straight up that I had seen the messages and the Uber receipts on her phone, and that was all I needed to know to end things between us. She just cried even more then, but I didn't try to talk anymore. I just finished packing and went to wait in the living room until she was ready to come out and talk. Eventually, she did come out to the living room and sat down next to me on the couch. She asked if we could talk things over, but I told her calmly that we weren't just going to have a chat. I needed real honest answers from her. She said she would tell the truth. So I started asking her the questions I had, even though I was shaking the whole time. Keeping myself together was a huge struggle, but I pushed through. I needed to know if this was her first time stepping out on our relationship before she even spoke. Tears were streaming down her face. Then she admitted that, no, this wasn't the first time she'd been unfaithful multiple times throughout our relationship. She described it as, in her exact words, just sex, a way for me to let off steam. She insisted that none of these encounters meant anything to her. I remember writing in a comment after I first posted my story that I couldn't imagine all the love we shared just disappearing all at once. But in that moment, I felt it all slip away. The woman I was talking to wasn't the person I married. She was someone else entirely. She wouldn't tell me how many times she had been unfaithful, only that it was more than just last night. When I asked if she had been safe, if she had used protection, she quickly nodded, seeming almost shocked that I would question it. Regardless, I'm not taking any chances and plan to get tested for STIs as a precaution. I've looked into when to get tested and will be following through with that. Curiosity got the better of me, and I asked if her friends were also cheating on their partners. Her answer was a mix of yes and no. I wanted her to tell me which friends were being unfaithful so I could alert their partners, but she refused. That refusal prompted me to reach out to the partners of all her friends that I could find on social media. There were a few I couldn't reach, but I tried to do my part. I didn't accuse anyone outright. I simply shared my own situation and mentioned that she had indicated some of her friends might be doing the same. My hope is that I didn't cause harm to any innocent parties, but I felt the need to take that risk. The reason she gave for her actions struck me the hardest. She said she needed sexual variety and that our sex life, despite not being dull, couldn't satisfy her need for something new. This response blindsided me. I was expecting excuses about me not being around enough or not being emotionally supportive, but instead she admitted to seeking out other men simply for the thrill of it for fun. Regarding the change of clothes she wore that day, she claimed she borrowed them from a friend so they could match, which sounded like a flimsy excuse at best. When I asked why she chose now to stop hiding her actions, her only response was that she got caught up in the moment. There's definitely more to the story, but she's not sharing, and frankly I'm past the point of wanting to dig deeper. After I didn't react, she brought up the idea of going to counseling or therapy. I made it clear to her again that our relationship was over and that I was going to leave. What happened next really upset me. My ex tried to initiate sex with me, touching me, and attempting to remove my clothes. The feeling of disgust was overwhelming and I had to physically push her away. Despite my clear rejection, she kept insisting that she could fix everything and that we could work through this together. I told her it was impossible and she broke down crying once more, then locked herself in the bathroom. By then I was thoroughly fed up with the whole situation. I decided to call her mom and tell her everything that had happened, including the cheating, the conversations we had, and my decision to leave. I've always had a decent relationship with her parents. Upon hearing what was going on, they immediately decided to make the hour-long drive to our place, knowing they were on their way. Gave me the push I needed to finally leave. Her crying in the bathroom sounded so empty and performative to me, especially after the answer she gave to my questions. I couldn't tell if her tears were because I was leaving or because her deceit was being uncovered and her carefully constructed facade was falling apart. Part of me hoped she felt some remorse about me leaving, but her actions left me with little doubt. Before I left, I packed another bag with items that held sentimental value to me. Then I found a parking lot where I could sit in my car trying to contact a friend for a place to stay. I attempted to take a nap, but the adrenaline and emotions were too much. Her parents must have arrived at the apartment because she began calling and then texting me nonstop. When I didn't answer, her messages quickly turned from tearful pleas to anger. She even called me a terrible person for sharing everything with her mom. But I don't regret making that call. They're close, and I didn't want her to be alone. Plus, I needed someone there to prevent me from getting drawn back into the mess. Since leaving, I've received a barrage of texts from her, ranging from insults to desperate pleas for me to return and even photos of what she's eating. It's been an overwhelming whirlwind of emotions, but I'm trying to navigate this as best as I can, keeping a distance and focusing on moving forward. For some reason, I haven't replied to any of her messages. I feel like I've already said everything that needed to be said before I walked out. That's where things stand at the moment. Luckily, we didn't share bank accounts or anything like that, so splitting up our finances was straightforward. I went ahead and canceled any subscriptions that were charged to my credit card just to make sure there were no loose ends, and I updated all my important passwords to keep things secure. Right now, I'm staying on a friend's couch, but I'm actively looking for a short-term rental to have my own space while I figure out a more permanent living situation. I've also started looking for a divorce lawyer. A coworker recommended one, so unless I find a better option, I'm likely going to go with their suggestion. I also want to express how amazed and grateful I am for the support from everyone here. Thank you, truly from the bottom of my heart. It's not easy for me to open up about personal and emotional issues, even with people I'm close to. Sharing my story here, and receiving so much understanding and advice has been incredibly helpful and comforting. Thank you all so much for being such a supportive community during this difficult time. This update marks the end of this chapter for me. End of the update. Hey there, OP. I really hope this message comes across the right way. I just want to say that all things considered, you're handling this tough situation pretty well. It's clear you've been through a lot, but it seems like you've managed to get some clarity on things that were bothering you. You got the answers to your questions, even if they weren't the ones you were hoping for. But they've definitely helped point you in the right direction for what comes next. I also really want to highlight how impressive it is that you've kept your distance after that final conversation with her. You haven't picked up the phone to call her, and you haven't sent any messages. That's really strong of you. It shows a lot of self-control and determination to stick to your decision, even when it's hard. So yeah, I just want to say well done on that front. You're doing a good job handling a situation that's far from easy. Now, I'm really looking forward to hearing the last part of your story. It sounds like you've been through quite the journey, and I'm eager to see where you've ended up after all this. You've shown a lot of courage and resilience so far, so I'm hopeful for you as we await the final update. Let's see how things have unfolded for you in the end, so now it's time to move on to the final update, to the story to see how it ends. Final update. Hey everyone, I'm here with what I'm calling the last update to a chapter of my life that has been incredibly challenging. I felt a huge wave of support from all of you since I first shared my story, and I wanted to close this chapter with an update for you all. The big news is that my ex and I have officially signed the divorce papers this week. It's a strange feeling, still fresh and somewhat unreal. Just 2 weeks after everything started to unravel, there was a bit of a hiccup at the start. She became uncooperative and started ignoring my lawyer's attempts to communicate for a while, but eventually we managed to get everything back on track. Regarding the cheating, there's not much more I can tell you that I haven't already. We went through a brief mediation process and it was clear to me then that she didn't have any real remorse for her actions. I'd been unpacking a lot of these feelings with a therapist. Yes, I've started seeing one. It's been tough coming to terms with the fact that someone I believed loved me could show so little regard for me in the end. Working through this has been both liberating and frightening. There's a sense of relief in having this weight lifted off my shoulders, but the uncertainty of what's ahead is daunting, yet I find myself feeling hopeful and somewhat excited about the future. I've had a few more conversations with her parents since everything happened. They were brief and not very detailed, but it was clear they were just as taken aback by the situation as I was and unsure of how to navigate their relationship with me moving forward in a ripple effect. 2 other relationships came to an end because of the revelations. I had brief talks with both of the other guys involved who found out about their own situations in different ways. After I gave them a heads up, it's been a messy situation, but ultimately it feels like it's for the best for all of us, and that's about everything I have to share, for now. I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to everyone here for your advice, support, and kind words throughout this process. This is the end of my final update. Well, okay, even though you've been through some really tough times, it seems like there's a silver lining to this update. It's kind of a relief to hear that not only has your marriage with your ex-wife, who sadly turned out to be unfaithful, come to an end, but also that 2 other relationships which were suffering from similar issues of infidelity have also come to a close. It's definitely a positive thing that all the dishonesty has been brought to light. It gives everyone involved a chance to start fresh and move on from the betrayal. I'm really hoping the best for you as you step into this new chapter of your life. It's not easy to rebuild after such a betrayal, but it sounds like you're on the right path. Take care of yourself, and thanks a lot for being open and sharing your story with us. It's been a journey, and your strength through it all is commendable. Now, shifting gears to another interesting story I came across. This next post comes from the subreddit Malicious Compliance, and it's titled Lawn Karen. Let's dive into what the story has in store and see what kind of update has been shared. I earn my bread and butter by keeping landscapes tidy, mainly for businesses and folks with a bit more money to their name. And let me tell you, it's often the well-off homeowners who give me the most headaches. The stories I could tell you from the odd and extravagant demands they make could fill a book. Not too long ago, I took on a new client. Let's call her Karen, because, well, that's actually her name. My first trip to her place was just yesterday. I had scoped out her property on Google Maps beforehand and estimated the job would take about an hour. However, when I got there, the scene was nothing short of a disaster. It looked like no one had touched the yard in ages. I ended up spending twice the time I planned to hold 2 hours to get it looking anywhere close to respectable. I pruned a bunch of palm trees, shaped up the bushes, mowed the lawn, did some edging, and cleared away all the fallen leaves. But wouldn't you know it? Karen rang up my company not long after I left, complaining about the job. She claimed I had lazily blown leaves into a corner of her yard and left them there, which was total nonsense. The leaves she was talking about had been sitting in that corner for so long they were practically part of the landscape mixed into the pine straw. Normally, I clear out any loose leaves from the flower beds and either mulch them or bag them up, which is exactly what I did. But Karen wasn't having any of it. She wouldn't listen to my explanation and demanded that I send someone over to pick up the remaining leaves. So I went back and I didn't just pick up the leaves. I cleared out practically all of the pine straw to about 75% of it, as expected. Karen was on the phone again shortly after this time, upset over her mysteriously vanishing pine straw. I reminded her of our previous conversation and offered to replace the pine straw but at a cost of $400. I'm still waiting to hear back from her on that one. Right. So here's the deal. Karen wanted those leaves gone. And guess what? You did exactly that. But the pine straw decided to tag along for the ride and suddenly Karen's got an issue with its disappearance. Well, if she's looking to get that fine straw back, she's got to be willing to cough up the cash at your asking price. You literally did what she asked for to the letter. Now, since we're diving into the realm of malicious compliance here, I'd usually advise steering clear of the comments section. But OP did chip in with a few gems of their own. So let's dig into those. QMoon chimes in with a perspective that any landscaper who's worked with the well-to-do can relate to. This kind of situation is par for the course. It seems like the folks with the most cash are often the ones least willing to part with it, especially when it means paying for extra work they didn't initially sign up for. You show up for a routine job and suddenly they want you to perform miracles without wanting to pay extra. While you're here, can you do this incredibly specific task that requires special equipment? I refuse to pay for. Next thing you know, they're nitpicking over the smallest details just to dodge the bill. Q-Moon recalls a client who complained about the grass not being cut up to the invisible property line. She couldn't even pinpoint herself, and then OP adds to the chorus with a story of their own. A client expected them to deal with a decaying armadillo in her backyard, as if it were just another line item on the landscaping checklist. The thing had been decomposing for days, left as if it were the landscaper's duty to dispose of it during the regular yard maintenance visit. When OP politely declined, citing that it wasn't their job, the lady claimed her husband was too ill to handle it himself, but lo and behold, the mention of refusal seemed to miraculously cure him as he promptly came out to clean it up, visibly annoyed, as if OP had some obligation to deal with it. Despite the absurdity and occasional frustrations, the pay from these clients is too good and their proximity to OP's other job sites makes it hard to just walk away. People sure can be astonishing. OP chimed in with some additional thoughts that really put things into perspective. If Karen was already showing signs of being incredibly difficult to work with from day one, when OP went above and beyond dedicating more time than initially planned, it was a clear indicator that things were likely to go downhill from there. Someone pointed out that Karen's property might have been neglected for so long, because she's probably burned through local lawn care services, unwilling to tolerate her demands. That speculation hit the nail on the head. Dealing with a bit of nonsense here and there is part and parcel of the job, especially considering what some clients are willing to pay. OP is usually quite accommodating and can put on a happy face to navigate through the minor annoyances. However, there's a limit to everything. OP has the advantage of being selective, often weeding out the particularly troublesome clients. It's a luxury not all businesses can afford, but it's crucial for maintaining sanity in a line of work that can sometimes test your patience to the extreme. The consensus seems to be that no self-respecting lawn care service would put up with the kind of unreasonable demands Karen was making. It might be time for her to start looking for alternatives. Perhaps she should consider turning to the local hardware store, picking up a lawnmower and hitting the internet for some DIY lawn care tutorials. It's either that or learning to adjust her expectations when working with professionals. So with OP's insights wrapping up the discussion on this high-maintenance client, it's time to see where this saga ends. Let's dive into the update and find out how OP navigated out of this thicket of thorns and what lessons were learned along the way. Update. So about a week after the whole saga I shared with you all, initially I got a call from none other than Karen herself. She was on the line wondering if I was still up for doing that pine straw job for $400. I didn't have a problem with doing the work, but I was curious. I asked her why she'd want to hire me again, especially after making it pretty clear she wasn't happy with my previous work. Turns out Karen had managed to wear out her welcome with not one, not two, but 3 other landscaping companies in our area and was now struggling to find anyone willing to take on her yard. My guess those companies probably decided they'd had enough of her impossible standards and showed her the door. Despite knowing this, I went ahead and did the pine straw job that morning. After I was done, she seemed satisfied enough to ask if I would be interested in doing bi-weekly maintenance for her going forward. I had to turn her down politely, and when she pressed me for a reason I just gave it to her straight. Dealing with her was proving to be a bit too much as she tended to be on the unreasonable side of things. She didn't take my honesty too well, but at least she paid for the work I did that day and I was out of there. For anyone wondering why I'd even consider going back after everything, well, it boiled down to a simple calculation. The job was an easy $200 in my pocket for just an hour's work, so in my mind it was a no-brainer. Why not? Right, end of the update. Well honestly I gotta say it's pretty awesome that you're in a position where you can just say no to clients who bring nothing but trouble. Seriously, who needs that kind of stress in their life? Certainly not you. Thanks a ton for sharing your story with us op. Thank you for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed the article, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. If you have a tale to share with me regarding your own or someone else's circumstance, please do not hesitate to contact me. Take care.